Let's talk about something a little cheerier now. I hope you all had a great Australia Day. I know I certainly did on Friday. Now, of course, you had the usual Invasion Day protests. Admittedly, they did get large turnouts in capital cities, but I feel like this year there was a real sense that the majority of people are over the annual attempts to shame us for being proud of our country. The whole Woolies thing blew up in their faces. They had to take out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of advertisements in newspapers, Evelyn, to apologise for everything and say, oh, no, it's okay, we do still believe in Australia Day. Walking around, you could see the flags up, people were having parties, there was the hum of music across Sydney where I was, and I'm sure the rest of the country. I felt this year like people felt a little more emboldened to say, no, hang on a minute, I am proud of my country, and I am not going to cower and feel like I cannot say that I love Australia and I'm celebrating Australia Day.
Yes, I think Australians have said no to the bully, and thank goodness for that, because we have been bullied into hating ourselves for far too long. And the whole, change the date was a halfway house to cancelling it. And I think finally Australians caught on to that, because it sounded nice, it sounded like a compromise, it sounded like maybe that's fair if we change the date. But like I said, it never was about that. No. And I think Australians have finally put two and two together and gone, hang on a second. They're literally wanting to erase history. They're wanting to change everything. That's why suburbs have changed names now. That's why streets have been labelled something different. Our entire heritage has been wiped from the face of our nation. Everything that the British have ever done, including the good, they want to get rid of. And I think that, everyday Australians have said, I've had enough. No to the bully. And I think it's great. I think stupidity can't sustain itself. And this is a clear example of that. And praise God.
The one place, though, of course, where they still had to do a bit of the virtue signalling was the ABC. This was ABC reporter Bridget Brennan on ABC News Breakfast, just reminding us that there's a dark history.
For First Nations people, for my people, this is a very important day to remember our ancestors and those who fought for many decades to improve the living standards for our people, and remember that it always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Now, Caroline, I have no issue at all with saying that Australia Day should be a day of celebration and reflection, because we have a long and vast history and many things have happened within that. But this line, always was, always will be, is saying to everyone else, including the migrants who just rocked up last week and the people who became citizens on Australia Day, that this is not your country.
That correspondent has absolutely no place saying that line with an ABC microphone. She should be part of a protest that has absolutely no place on a taxpayer-funded public broadcaster that has a charter to be fair and impartial. Yeah. This is our taxpayer dollars, what we're spending those high taxes on funding these people, basically pushing propaganda that we should not be proud of the country that we live in, that we shouldn't be proud of our history with all of its flaws, and it is a very flawed history. We should acknowledge that. But I was appalled to see that and that being allowed to stand, but it's not surprising given what we know about the ABC. Look, I think the polls have overwhelmingly showed, I don't think it's back in fashion. It's never been out of fashion. Overwhelming majority of Australians support Australia Day, and we shouldn't feel shamed about it.
I was going to say, one of the protesters had a big banner that said, abolish the date, abolish the state. And by that rationale, if they got all their demands, the ABC would instantly cease to exist. as would Medicare, the Anthony Albanese's Labor government, the far more patriotic Chris Minns Labor government, but the People's Republic of Victoria government.
Hooray. But the thing here, I think, is that with the loss of the voice, right, the only way you can continue to drive this discussion is almost by a war of attrition. And that's what the corporates like Woolies buy into. Just little by little, you line things up and try to make people feel guilty. But I think the problem now is, and partly because of the loss of the voice, people have started to fight back against that war of attrition. And they've realised that if they don't stand up and say something, that war of attrition might win. I think the modus operandi is almost blown up in the faces of the activists.
I think it's actually more dangerous than that, because I think because you have a minority of people who say things like, abolish the state, abolish the date, whatever, that then gives succour to extremists on the other side, and of course we saw the white supremacists come out because they're so fearless and courageous that they march in great hotbeds of multiculturalism like North Sydney and Artarmon. I mean, where are they marching to? St Leonard's. But again, they can then present this argument. We see similar things happening in America, saying, these people, these cultural elites want to take away our Australia Day, and we need to stand up and fight to get it back. So far from actually putting these knuckle draggers in a box in their mother's basement where they belong, it actually, in a way, kind of in their own conspiracy-riddled mind, gives them some form of legitimacy, and that is the problem. If you don't have a normal, sensible centre at the core of your politics and the core of your society, you will end up with extremists because they will be reacting to extremists and radicals on the other side. So when you have people saying, it's all Aboriginal land, all white people should be abolished, and all government should be abolished because it's all racist, well, that gives these nutters something to actually, a platform to actually stand on. So that's the problem.
Yeah, and when you look at the people as well carrying on about Captain Cook, if I hear one more person say that Captain Cook invaded Australia, I will go spare. He was killed 9 years before the first fleet arrived.